Here's the good news if you're a Flyers fan. They will occasionally win a game, which hockey teams are going to do. They will go toe-to-toe with a team like Edmonton that could very well end up being a Stanley Cup favorite. But ultimately, they are going to lose games, and they are going to put themselves in position to have a really good draft. Keep in mind, they have Edmonton's pick, they have Colorado's pick, and then they have their own pick. If things go the way that I expect them to, I would very much expect a Scott Laughton trade by the deadline. And I'd probably expect one other player to get moved. I don't think they're going to move Risto. At this point, I think I'd be really, really shocked if they moved Rasmus Ristolainen. I think that in their minds, they're going to try to flip the switch next year. Whether that means that this offseason they're going to offer sheet a few restricted free agents, whether it means they're going to get really active in the trade market, I think that the rebuild in their minds ends this year. I think it ends with this upcoming draft. I think this offseason is the one where they take it all and they say, all right, now we're gonna flip the switch a little bit. We're gonna start trying to win. They're going to tell themselves that Matvei Michkov and whatever player they get here, plus Jetlachenko next year, plus some of the other guys that they believe in coming up and through their system, that they are going to have enough young talent that they can start to look to add. I don't envision a scenario where the 2025-2026 Philadelphia Flyers are tanking or are a bottom of the league team that, like, people even like me that have been saying tank, tank, tank. I don't think they're going to even be close to being in contention for that next year. I really do think that they're going to add talent this offseason through the draft, through free agency, through trades. So with all that in mind, Rasmus Ristolainen actually does have value. And while getting a first-round pick for him would be great, if they are going to flip the switch, you're going to have another top four defenseman take his place. And based on his cap hit, based on where he's been, there's now part of me, I can't believe I'm saying it, that thinks, if they keep him, it might not be the worst thing in the world. Now, if they internally believe that they're going to go one more year of the rebuild where they're going to be bad again, well, then, yeah, you trade Risto. And if it's not now, it's going to be around the draft, and you're going to try to get a 2026 pick. But I'd be really, really shocked if they moved Risto. I think that Laughton is a very good chance. I think there's a very good candidate, or a very good chance that you see Laughton as the lead trade candidate from this team. Could they look to move a Paling or a Hathaway or someone else who could maybe go help a team on a playoff hunt this year? Maybe. There's a possibility of that. But I don't think you're going to see any more big name deals between now and the trade deadline. I could be wrong, but I don't think I will be. I think that it's going to be Laughton, and that might be it. And in fairness, you add that to the Farabee and Frost trade, and I say, you've done enough to clear out some cap. You've done enough to bring in some capital. You'll get some kind of trade capital, some kind of draft capital in a Laughton deal. I don't know. I find myself feeling a little bit more positive because I feel like I actually understand where the Flyers are going now. And I think they've now indicated through their actions that they are much more in line with what I've been, banging on the table about. Lower the ceiling, lower the floor. I think that it's going to be a painful last month or so, but I do think that this team is going to remain competitive. Even if they move a Scott Laughton, they're still going to remain competitive in games. They will pick up a few wins, but they're going to put themselves in really good position to go up and get, hopefully, some elite talent at the top of the draft. Right now, this is viewed as a 4-player draft. Some say it's the top 3, then there's a little bit of a drop to number 4, and then there's a big drop where, like, number 5 through 20 is essentially the same player. You have to hope that your scouts are right. You have to hope that your scouts are going to lead you in the right direction, especially because of how important this draft is. 3 first-round picks, 4 second-round picks. Will they take some of that draft capital and then try to parlay that into 2026? Will they try to take some of that draft capital and try to move up in this draft? Remains to be seen. Right now, as of recording Monday morning, the Flyers, if the season ended right now and if the lottery played out in order, they would have the 7th overall pick in this draft. 7 is where they happened to land Matvei Michkov, who fell for a bunch of different reasons, but 7th pick in the draft, I'd be pretty happy. If you are able to find your way a little bit more to the bottom, that would be great. That actually would be fantastic. As it stands right now, and I'll pull this up really quick. If you take a look at where the Flyers are relative to the other teams that are trying to race to the bottom, San Jose right now is in a league of their own in terms of ineptitude. Chicago's pretty close there at 41 points. Nashville at 47 with 56 games played, which you can look at it a few different ways, right? If teams have games in hand on the Flyers, so like Nashville's played 56, the Flyers have played 58. The Flyers have maxed out the number of points they could have over those 58 games, right? In theory, Nashville could win those 2 games, or they could win 2 games down the stretch here, which puts them at 51. Still not as close to, it's not the same thing as 57, but like with games in hand, they could end up picking up wins. The Flyers could pick up some losses, and maybe that top 3 has just a little bit of give to it. I think San Jose and Chicago are essentially locked into those bottom 2. Nashville could end up being locked into the bottom 3. It's possible. You look at Seattle, you look at Buffalo, you look at Pittsburgh, you look at the Flyers, the Blues, the Canadiens, Utah, Anaheim, the Islanders. They're all in a nasty little mix of points and games played. Like, this could go sideways, which is why the lower the ceiling, lower the floor plan is the way to go. You could pick up a couple of wins here and there. Pick up out-of-conference wins. Have competitive games against teams like the Oilers. That's fine. But when you have a game against one of those other teams that you're kind of battling for or jockeying for better draft positioning with, you play a Buffalo or a Pittsburgh, that needs to be a regulation loss. That's a 4-point swing. If you win in regulation and you pick up 2 points and the opposition doesn't pick up any, that's one thing. But if you invert that, that ends up being a 4-point swing. Now, you can't tell players to go out and lose. You can't tell John Tortorella to go out and lose. Moving a Lawton could end up having some ramifications on how this team plays. If you were to move Risto, it would have a massive impact. Like, if the goal here really were, we want to tank to try to go get a generational talent, which I don't think is in this draft, then you move Risto, because it gives you the best chance of getting yourself in position where you get a slightly better chance of getting that first overall pick. But if you look at the percentages, like right now, the Flyers at 7 would have a 6.5% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, right? If you fall to, let's say, 5, it's an 8.5% chance. So it's not a huge jump. It's really where you get to, like, the third worst record is 11.5. The second worst record is 13.5. If you have the worst record in the league, you end up with a 25.5% chance, which is far from a guarantee. But anyway, if you look at where the Sixers are and you look at where the Flyers are right now, both teams are going to lose a lot of games over these last couple of months. And in fact, for the Sixers, assuming they shut down Embiid, they shut down Paul George, they should be able to keep that top 6 protected pick. Maybe they get lottery luck. Maybe they end up getting a piece that helps them for their long-term future. But oh, by the way, if they get a healthy Joel Embiid back next year, if they either move Paul George or they get a healthy Paul George back next year, they actually are in very good position to maybe actually do something next year. The Flyers are in a little bit of a different place where if you get a top pick, I don't know if that guy's going to play for your team next year. He might be 2 years out. But then you start to think about, all right, restricted free agency. You think about unrestricted free agency. You think about trades. You think about next year. You think about next trade deadline. There's a potential here that the 2026-27 team, it's 2 seasons away, but that team for the Flyers could be a really good one. There are reasons to believe that things could be turning around. There, of course, are possibilities that these things could go sideways for both teams. I happen to want to live in the positive. I want to live in the positive mindset right now. But I do think that you're going to see a lot of losing. The main thing to keep in mind is that if you're a Sixers fan, you want to keep that first-round pick. This isn't just like a matter of jockeying for position. This is, you could theoretically lose that pick. You don't want to lose it. Lose games, keep your pick. If you're the Flyers, do what you're going to do. Try to get yourself a little bit closer to that safety zone, that, let's say, the bottom 5, and not end up at the, let's say, number 13 spot where you have no chance. I mean, if you're at 13, there's practically no chance of you jumping up in the lottery to take that first overall pick. You have to be really, really careful.